tax regime will have better performance with the economic recovery anticipated, with the gradual easing of credit restriction, price stability, and institutional improvement with the introduction of an IT system, associated efficient procedures, and professional improvement in the human resource capacity that will create an enabling environment to manage the sophisticated tax system. We are now in the successive third year of our reform journey and near entering the fourth year. In each budget, the government maintained the 3 C's, namely continuity, consistency, and clarity, which were missing in all tax reform initiatives of the past. Despite revenue concerns, no ad hoc measures or reversal in the policy direction were made. Consecutive actions by government were consistent with the policy thrust toward creating a broad-based, simple tax regime Lakmali desired. Every budget was made through a wider consultation process, expanding inclusivity in policy making. Detailed technical notes with regard to each proposal were included in the budget document to provide clarity. Lakmali and several other professional tax consultants contributed through their analytical minds by participating in now so popular budget seminars pioneered by Lakmali's team. All enabling tax legislations were made reflecting the ideas that evolved through this discussion process, and we were also able to pass tax laws well on time, moving away from the past practice of passing tax laws after long delays. These are no doubt salutary features of government policy strategies on taxation towards a new fiscal policy regime. Let me now turn to the underlying fiscal policy reform towards lower deficit in the national budget. The major thrust in this process is to protect public investment at around 6% of GDP at least, implying that fiscal policy is expected to turn around government savings to a positive saving balance to be able to finance part of public investment and reduce the borrowing requirements. Hence, the current expenditure levels are as important as revenue levels in the initial phase of this transformation. It is important to highlight that despite wage adjustments and strengthening of the public service delivery mechanism, which involve the recruitment of required public servants into various services, non-interest recurrent expenditure has grown only by modest 8% in nominal terms, enabling the recurrent expenditure GDP ratio to fall from 20.2% in 2002 to 14.9% in 2012. The reduction would have been more visible if not for the high interest cost, which accounted for 5.4% of GDP in 2012 due to monetary policy tightening that was required to manage external reserve stability in the economy. Despite the recurrent expenditure in relation to GDP in 2012 took value of 14.9% as against a government revenue of 13.9%, resulting in a dis-saving of 1% of GDP in comparison to 4.2% of GDP in 2002. The decline in government revenue in relation to GDP between 2002 and 2012, 10-year period, was from 16.6% to 13.9%. A solid 2.7% decline in revenue GDP needs to be compared against the decline in recurrent expenditure, which is much larger, underscoring an overall improvement in the management of revenue account of the budget in recent times. Generally, non-tax revenue as a source of revenue is not expected to be buoyant an economy in which state enterprises do not occupy an important share of business activities. However, the present policy strategy recognizes an important share of business for state enterprises as well. At present, there are 55 state business enterprises, of which 10 large enterprises are engaged in activities in the field of port operations, aviation, water supply, electricity, petroleum, banking and insurance, and account for 95% of the asset base of 55 state enterprises. These enterprises could be strong revenue sources once the current capital infusion process and adjustment in prices are completed. With the strong external reserve position of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka and the expansion of government fee levying services, a further revenue growth could be expected. The present level of government revenue, however, needs to be improved for a variety of reasons. First, the present level is below the lower middle income country average rate, ranging between 16 to 18% of GDP. Hence, it is necessary to create a taxation policy and administrative environment which will generate revenue that will commensurate with the nominal growth of GDP. In other words, tax system need to be revenue elastic. Second, it will provide adequate liquidity in relation to treasury operation to facilitate budget execution and iron out payment delays. Last but not least, it will enable the government to finance a share of government investment from government-owned savings through a revenue surplus. Such a surplus creation will reduce both domestic and foreign borrowing needs and thereby lower interest rate as well as interest cost of the budget, helping to consolidate low interest rate policy regime with greater freedom to monetary authority to conduct monetary policy as well as to promote system stability in the banking system as a regulator of banking and financial institutions. The task ahead, therefore, is to eliminate remaining savings in the revenue account and to keep the deficit in the budget at below 5% of GDP in order to protect public investment at 6% of GDP.